Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started.
Are you working just to retire? Now, the reason I ask is I think it's important to share the actual definition of retirement. The actual definition of retirement is to be taken out of service. So knowing that retirement means to be taken out of service, let me ask that first question again. Are you working just to retire? Now, if I had asked you that the first time, you would say, yes, I totally plan on retiring. I think most people in the United States plan on retirement at some point. But do any of us plan to be taken out of service? Are we saving all of our money so that we can just no longer be useful one day? I don't think that we would say yes if we were asked in that way. When people go, hey, are you saving for retirement? What if we were actually asking people, are you saving so that you can no longer be of service to your community and to society at age 65, 70, 75, whatever age that you may retire? I don't think most of us would say yes to that. I don't think most of us are planning and saving to no longer be of service at age whatever. And so I thought it would be important to talk about where did this concept of retirement come in? And there's no judgment being passed here. If you're retired or you're about to retire or you do want to retire one day, this is not a judgment call. This is a redefining what work means and redefining retirement. So it's not this thing that we work for and work towards one day to be taken out of service, but it's a reallocation of our knowledge, our skills, and our time. But I think some of the hardest walks that I have walked through with friends and family are the people who have lost themselves, lost their identity, lost their purpose, lost their passion, lost their excitement in life after they retired or post-business sale. Now, I think that is a dangerous thing that I'm not promoting that your identity should be tied to your work. I am most certainly not saying that. Your identity is not what you do. But I think there's another component of it that we as human beings were created to create. We were created to work. Now, we were not necessarily created to toil. And in my beliefs as a Christian, that happened after the fall, right? That happened when sin entered the world, that we would toil for the rest of the days of our life in this current earth. I don't believe that's how it was meant to be. I don't believe that's how it will be one day. I do, however, recognize that is how it is today, but that's not how it was meant to be. We were built to create and cultivate and to rule. That is what our job is. We were created to be of service to one another and to the planet, right? So this concept of retirement has always been a little foreign to me. I think I was very fortunate. I consider myself very privileged to have been raised by several generations of entrepreneurs. My grandfather worked into his 80s. And as soon as he did retire in his 80s, there was a sharp decline in his health. And I think it very much had to do with he lost touch with service and serving his company and his team and his employees and his family. My dad is now in his mid-70s, and I hope that he never retires fully. His workload definitely looks different today than it did 20 years ago. He might disagree with that, but I think it's really important that he has purpose and enjoyment in his work, and that is the purpose of this email, is to enjoy what you do so that it doesn't always feel like work. It's that you're living into what you were created to be and to do and to provide for this world. And I come from an upbringing where I got to see my family of business owners actually contribute to the community and to our team members and to each other, and doing it in a way that was life-giving, not life-taking. I know not all jobs can be life-giving all the time, but I do also believe that that's a decided choice that we make. We get to make the choice to be excellent at what we're doing, no matter what that job is. And I have had jobs in the hospitality and restaurant industry to, pay, commission only pay, cold calling, selling tickets, traveling full time, to leadership roles and sales management roles and, being paid to speak. There's a large variety of roles that I've had over the course of time. And it doesn't matter what your role is. It's a decision that we all get to make to go, regardless of what I'm doing, I choose to be the best at what I'm doing right now. It's a decided decision of excellence, of being good at what it is for the sake of giving it your best. Because we can learn something and grow in every season and in every role that we have in our life. Now, I also want to get back to what I started with is this concept of retirement, and where did it come from, and how is it snuck into our culture that gives people an out to no longer create and cultivate in the way that we were actually created to do. And so I thought this would be a really interesting history lesson super quickly. But in the pre-industrial era, most Americans worked as long as they were physically able. There was no formal retirement. A lot of that was physical labor, right? And so maybe those years were shorter, right? But they worked until they couldn't anymore because that's how they provided. There was no Social Security. There was no pension funds or retirements. Like, you worked until you couldn't work anymore, and then you had a family that you depended on, right? Then we have late 19th century. And then you've got the emergence of railroads and banks, and that's when pensions and government jobs and all of that started to evolve. And then we get into the 1930s. That's when the Social Security Act kicked in. This wasn't until the 1930s. Then this was signed in by President Franklin Roosevelt during the Great Depression, and it established a government-funded pension to provide Social Security for older Americans, right? Much of that due to the, time of life that we were in with the Great Depression and needing more ways to support those in their older age. Not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. Then we get into the 1950s and 60s, and company pensions became way more common. Not as common today, but very then. But this is where the whole idea of retirement and no longer having full-time working hours began to really kick in, and retirement was really seen at age 65, right? Then we get into the 1970s and the 1980s. That is when 401ks started to come on the scene. That wasn't until the 80s. Like, that's when I was born. Like, this is not something that has been around for a very long time. And I think this is really important because if you just high level go back, it was not until the 50s and the 60s that retirement was even a thing, right? That's not even a full generation ago, right? That's my dad's age. My dad was born in 1951. So at the time of him being born, i.e., that's why my grandfather worked until he was 80, retirement wasn't a thing, right? You worked until you were no longer physically able. And one of the things that has been coming up a lot in our family, and we have aging parents and friends and who have aging parents, and a lot of talk about retirement. And here's the thing that I just wanted to share with you guys in a long-about way, to be honest, is find something that you can do for the rest of your life. Find a way to be in service to a group of people for the rest of your life. And retiring from a formal 9-to-5 is one thing, but retiring in general so that you can golf and play video games, that's not being of service. That's not the goal of retirement. The goal is not to work your whole life and not give back. The goal is to work until you can find more time to give back to the younger people and to develop the next generation and to create new leaders and to use your skills and experience to educate and inform and help develop an entirely new generation of people who will come after you. I find it odd that our most experienced workers, leaders, employees, the ones who are retiring are the people we have the most to learn from. They've seen it all. They've been around the block. They've been through different economies and market conditions and recessions and depressions and life and death and marriage and babies. And they have so much to give. These are not the people we want leaving our workforce, y'all. These are wildly experienced and important people in our job force. This is a very important part of our workforce. Now, do working hours look different? Can they look different? Should they work different? Sure. Those are all things that are good and fine. I'm just encouraging you to not work for retirement, but find a work that you can do for the rest of your life so that you are never taken out of service.